Let's see how long it takes him to get home, my mother smirked, as my parents drove away from the desolate gas station, leaving me, a bewildered 16-year-old, stranded with nothing but a few dollars and a crushing sense of betrayal. I never looked back. 20 years later, they came knocking, desperate for help, oblivious to the fact that I already owned their foreclosed house, and my demolition crew was scheduled for next week. I'm Scott. I'm 36 now, a successful business owner in construction, with a life built from the ground up, brick by painful brick. My hands, calloused and strong, are a testament to the work I've put in, not just on buildings, but on myself. But beneath the comfortable life I've forged, there's still a phantom ache, a whisper of a past that occasionally catches me off guard, like the smell of gasoline on a hot summer day. My parents, Gerald and Denise, were what they called tough love enthusiasts. In our small, quiet suburban town in Ohio, they projected an image of stern but devoted guardians, raising their children with a firm hand and unwavering principles. Other parents admired their discipline, often saying, Gerald and Denise really know how to raise independent kids. My mother, with her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and her practiced, benevolent smile, would simply nod, basking in the unspoken praise. She was a master of appearances. For me, growing up felt less like being raised and more like being constantly tested, a subject in a relentless experiment on character building. Every forgotten chore, every less-than-perfect grade, every youthful mistake was met not with understanding, but with a lesson. And their lessons were often brutal. I remember when I was 12 and forgot to mow the lawn before the weekend. My father, Gerald, a man whose voice could command attention even in a crowded room, woke me at 3 a.m. Scott, get up. The dew's off the grass now. Time to finish what you started. I stumbled out into the cold, pre-dawn darkness, the hum of the old lawnmower a lonely drone under a sky still studded with stars. My mother, usually so gentle, would simply smile and say, "A little discomfort now builds resilience later, darling." Her words, delivered with such a sweet, maternal tone, felt like warm honey laced with poison. They seeped into my young mind, telling me that this pain, this isolation, was for my own good, a twisted form of love. I desperately wanted to believe it. Then there was the time I got a C+ in chemistry in February, my sophomore year of high school. My phone was confiscated, my allowance cut. That night, after a particularly harsh lecture from my father about focusing on my studies, I heard the click of the lock. "Maybe a night in the cold will help you focus, son," he'd said, his breath fogging in the crisp air. I tried the doorknob again and again, the chill seeping into my bones, a terrifying realization that they were serious. I ended up breaking into our detached garage, shivering through the night, the smell of old oil and damp earth a strange comfort. When I snuck back into the house at dawn, my parents were furious about the broken window. "You'll pay for that, Scott," my father roared. And I did, meticulously counting out my meager McDonald's earnings, each dollar a bitter reminder of their calculated cruelty. Looking back, I realized my biggest flaw then was my desperate, naive hope. I was too trusting, too eager to please, constantly striving for a love that felt conditional, always just out of reach. I believed their narrative, that I was somehow deficient, and their tough love was the only way to fix me. I was trapped in a cycle of trying to earn their affection, constantly seeking their approval, only to be met with more lessons, more punishments. It wasn't just physical discomfort. It was a constant chipping away at my self-worth, leaving me feeling like an outsider in my own home, a tool to be used rather than a son to be cherished. My younger sister, Sabrina, seemed to fare better. She was softer, more compliant, and perhaps more adept at navigating their complex emotional landscape. She was their little princess, often shielded from the harsher lessons, which in turn subtly solidified my role as the designated problem child. She never truly understood the depth of what I went through. Or perhaps she chose not to. There was a quiet resentment in me, but also a protective instinct. She was still my sister, a fellow inhabitant of this strange, conditional family. The only real glimpse of unconditional love came from Aunt Lola, my mother's older sister. Aunt Lola lived 4 states away, and my parents had largely cut her off years ago. Her crime? She bought me a simple flip phone when I was 13, after my parents had taken mine away as a lesson. She enables bad behavior. Mom had sniffed, dismissing her sister with a wave of her hand. But Aunt Lola was different. Her calls were always warm, her voice filled with genuine curiosity about my life, not just my grades or my chores. She was a beacon, a quiet knowing that not all family connections had to be fraught with conditions. I held on to those calls, a secret comfort in the confusing world of my childhood. That July morning, the one that changed everything, started like any other summer day. We were driving back from visiting Sabrina at college, about 4 hours from home. I was in the back seat of our beat-up Camry, half asleep, earbuds in, listening to some forgotten pop-punk band. The sun beat down, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirage, and the air conditioner in our old car was barely coping. I had this hazy, undefined dream of what my life could be, a life free from the constant judgment, a life where my worth wasn't measured by my obedience or my performance. It felt distant, almost impossible. I had no idea how close I was to taking the first, terrifying step towards it. My parents were up front, their voices a low murmur, occasionally punctuated by my father's booming laugh. A deceptive calm before the storm, a final moment of normalcy that would shatter into a million pieces at a nondescript gas station off I-95. My father's voice cut through my half-sleep, sharp as a whip. "Scott, give me a coffee, and check the oil while you're out." He barked the order from the driver's seat, his hand already reaching for his wallet. I mumbled a reluctant, "Okay, Dad," and dragged myself out of the scorching heat of the car. The midday sun was a physical weight on my shoulders, the air thick with the smell of gasoline and something vaguely industrial. This wasn't one of those quaint rest stops. It was a no-frills, middle-of-nowhere station, a solitary outpost surrounded by stretches of forgotten highway. I went inside, the AC a weak sigh against the oppressive heat. The cashier was an older guy, his face etched with fatigue, looking half dead from the heat himself. The coffee machine was broken, of course, so I had to wait for him to make a fresh pot. Every minute dragged, my patience thinning with the heat and the lingering exhaustion from the long drive. My backpack with my change of clothes and a book was still in the car. All I had was my wallet, my iPod, and the $20 my dad had handed me. Finally, armed with a steaming cup of coffee and a small bottle of oil, I pushed open the glass door and stepped back into the blinding glare. The parking lot shimmered, heat rising in waves. My eyes scanned for the familiar beat-up Camry. It wasn't there. At first, a jolt of confusion. Maybe they'd moved to a different pump? I walked a few paces, scanning the limited lot. Nothing. Then, a sickening lurch in my stomach. In the distance, disappearing onto the highway, were the distinct taillights of our car. A cruel, choked laugh echoed in my head, my father's. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. This had to be another one of their lessons, right? A twisted joke. They'd turn around. They had to. My hand, still clutching the warm coffee cup, began to tremble. The heat intensified, but it wasn't the sun's warmth I felt. It was a cold, creeping dread. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Let's see how long it takes you to get home. Consider this a lesson in problem solving." The smiley face. That damned smiley face. It wasn't just cruel. It was the chilling signature of every hidden wound they'd ever inflicted. It was the cherry on top of years of calculated neglect, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation, all cloaked in the guise of tough love. My chest tightened, each breath a shallow struggle. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate to escape. I tried calling them, my thumb fumbling. Straight to voicemail, every time. After about 20 agonizing minutes, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Mom. "Don't bother calling. Your father says you need to figure this out yourself. See you when you make it home." The lukewarm coffee in my hand suddenly felt like a branding iron. My chest tightened, each breath a shallow struggle. My whole body felt like it was humming with a terrible, buzzing static. This wasn't just a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. This was deliberate. This was malicious. A flood of memories washed over me, each one a sharp, stinging slap. The time they locked me out in February, huddled in the freezing garage, believing it would help me focus on my studies. The countless times I've been blamed for things that weren't my fault, told I was too sensitive, or that I imagined things. The subtle ways they'd pitted Sabrina and me against each other, praising her compliance while ridiculing my spirit. This wasn't just a lesson, it was the final, devastating straw. It wasn't a snap. It was a slow, deliberate splintering of every last thread connecting me to them. The air around me didn't just feel hot. It felt like a furnace, burning away the naive boy I once was. Standing there at that desolate gas station, watching the last faint dust of their car disappear into the shimmering heat, something inside me clicked. Or maybe, more accurately, something that had been stubbornly holding on finally broke. The desperate desire for their approval, the agonizing hope that if I just did enough, was good enough, they would finally see me, truly love me. It all evaporated like morning mist under the unforgiving sun. I was done, not with them, but with being their victim. I had about $140 saved up from my summer job lifeguarding at the local pool. Not much, but enough for a start. My backpack was gone, but I had my wallet and my beloved iPod. My eyes fell on the worn-out cashier inside. He was watching me with a mixture of pity and vague curiosity. I walked back inside, my steps strangely steady. "Excuse me," I said, my voice hoarse. "Where's the nearest bus station?" The cashier, a man named Frank according to his name tag, pointed a weary finger. "About 2 miles that way, kid. Off Route 32. You okay?" I managed a tight nod. "Yeah, just need to make a call first." I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over the contacts. My parents were blocked, of course. But there was one number, one last hope. Aunt Lola, my mother's sister, the enabler who had bought me that phone years ago, the one who'd always listened without judgment. They hadn't spoken in ages, but I knew she was my only shot. She picked up on the second ring, her voice surprisingly strong. "Hello, Aunt Lola," I croaked. "It's Scott." A pause. "Scott, honey, what's wrong? You sound—" "Mom and Dad." I choked out that they left me. At a gas station. On I-95. As a joke. The words tumbled out, raw and painful. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "They left you where?" Her voice, usually so calm, was filled with a mix of disbelief and cold fury. "Oh, that's it. That's absolutely it. What happened next is kind of blur. Aunt Lola was 4 states away, in Asheville, North Carolina, but she did something I'll never forget. She didn't scold me. She didn't question me. She didn't tell me to go home. She just acted. Listen closely, Scott. Go back inside that station. Tell that cashier you need a ride to the bus station. I'm sending a cab." No, not a cab. It was some local taxi service, like an Uber before Uber was a thing. "Get yourself here," she said, her voice firm. "We'll figure the rest out. Don't you dare go back to them." Within minutes, she bought me a bus ticket online. Her practical kindness was more powerful than any grand declaration of love. My phone kept buzzing with texts from Mom as I waited, her words a final desperate attempt at control. "Don't you dare call Lola, Scott. You better be walking home, young man. Your father is very disappointed. This attitude of yours needs to stop." I blocked their number, turned off my phone, and got on that bus. As the countryside rolled by, 6 hours blurring into a quiet, determined journey, I felt a strange mix of fear and liberation. Every mile was a mile further from their toxic grip, a silent promise to myself that I would never, ever go back. The look on their faces when they came home to an empty house must have been something. I heard later from Sabrina that they drove back to the gas station that night, expecting to find me waiting. They filed a missing persons report, but it got dismissed quickly when Aunt Lola, already a step ahead, sent over the emancipation paperwork she'd started filing that very night. That was 2 decades ago. 20 years. 2 decades of blessed, glorious silence. I finished school living with Aunt Lola, got my GED, then a certification in heavy equipment operation and construction management. Aunt Lola, bless her heart, was my anchor, my quiet confidant. She didn't preach, she didn't judge, she just loved. She taught me what real family felt like. After her passing last year, a quiet ache settled in, but also a renewed sense of purpose. I built a life on solid ground, brick by painful brick, far from the shifting sands of my past. My own children grew up knowing their worth, their voices always heard, never dismissed as a lesson. My business, Scott Construction, thrived. We built reliable structures, but more importantly, we built a reputation for integrity and fairness. I thought that chapter of my life was closed, sealed shut, the pages yellowed and brittle with time. Then, yesterday morning, my office phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I hadn't seen in 2 decades. My stomach dropped. I let go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again, and again. When I finally walked out of the boardroom after a long meeting, my phone was a blinking monument to my past. 39 missed calls. Most were from numbers I didn't recognize, but 3 were from my sister Sabrina, who I hadn't spoken to in 2 decades. The first voicemail was Sabrina, her voice raw with tears. "Scott, please pick up. Mom and Dad found you. They're spiraling. Just call me back, okay? Please, not them. Me." My coffee went cold as I listened to the others. Most were from my parents, alternating between theatrical, guilt-tripping, and furious demands. "Your mother is sick, Scott. Sick with worry, abandoned by her own son." And then, a jarring shift. "How dare you abandon your family after everything we've done for you?" The hypocrisy was a bitter taste in my mouth. "We made one mistake, one tiny mistake," my mother wailed in one message, sounding almost hysterical. "One that's hilarious," I muttered to myself, the old pain a sharp echo. The last voicemail was my dad, his words slurred, barely coherent. "You think you're better than us, with your fancy business? We made you who you are. You owe us." That was their signature line. Always the victim, always demanding payment for a debt I never incurred. I sat in my truck for a long time, the phone still blowing up with more calls. I was numb, but a cold clarity began to set in. This wasn't about reconciliation, it was about need. Their need. Finally, I texted Sabrina. "Meeting tomorrow. Denny's on 5th, 7 a.m. Come alone or don't come." She showed up looking exactly like I remembered her, just older, more tired. The same nervous habit of shredding napkins into tiny, indecipherable strips. Before she even sat down, the words tumbled out of her, desperate and rushed. "They're losing the house, Scott. Dad's been gambling. Mom's maxed out all their credit cards. They found your company website, and they want money." The waitress brought our coffees. My hands didn't shake as I added cream. "Tell me everything." Sabrina poured out the whole sordid story. Dad's gambling addiction had spiraled. Mom's compulsive shopping was out of control. They'd taken out a second mortgage on a house years ago for one of Dad's foolproof investment schemes that predictably had gone south. Now, they were 6 months behind on payments. The bank was foreclosing. They needed $175,000 to save their house. Sabrina kept apologizing, saying she tried to stop them from contacting me, that she hated what they'd become. "Why help them, Sabrina?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "After everything," she started crying, real desperate tears. "They're still our parents, Scott," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "No," I said, my voice chillingly steady. "They stopped being my parents at that gas station. The difference between you and me, Sabrina, is you're still hoping they'll change. I'm not." My phone buzzed again, Mom calling. I declined it and pulled out my wallet, placing a 20 on the table. "I'm paying for breakfast. Block my number after this. Whatever they do next, don't call me. I mean it. You're my sister, and I love you, but I'm not your solution. Let them fall." I was halfway to my truck when Sabrina ran after me, her voice hoarse. "Scott, wait. They're coming to your office. Tomorrow morning. Mom found the address." I tried to stop them, I swear. I just nodded. "Good. Let them come." I got back to my office to find 27 new messages. Apparently, my parents were telling the whole extended family I was a heartless son who had abandoned them and now refused to help in their time of desperate need. Classic narcissist playbook. But here's what they didn't know. I'd spent the last 24 hours making calls of my own. As soon as I heard those voicemails, a cold, strategic part of my brain had kicked in. I immediately had my team start digging. Turns out their mortgage was owned by a bank I'd worked with on several large commercial projects. They were 3 months behind on payments. Foreclosure had already started, but they were still trying to delay it. And then I saw the opportunity. My company, through a discreet holding entity, had acquired their mortgage debt from a bank. Legally. Last week. Tomorrow morning, they would walk into my office thinking they had leverage, thinking they could shame me, manipulate me, force me to be their retirement plan. They had no idea what was coming. I'd scheduled a meeting with my lawyer first thing. By the time they arrived, everything would be in place. They wanted to see what I'd made of myself. Fine. I would let them see exactly who their son became and what happens when you push someone too far. I wasn't that scared 16-year-old anymore. I wasn't running, and I was done playing nice. The next morning, the air in my office was thick with anticipation. My stomach wasn't dropping anymore. It was a tight, coiled spring ready to release. Jenny, my sharp-witted receptionist, buzzed through. "Scott, there's a couple here insisting on seeing you. They say they're your parents. Send them up," I said, my voice steady. Might as well face this head-on. Through the glass walls of my office, I watched Gerald and Denise walk in. They looked older, worn down, certainly not the invincible figures of my childhood. Dad's once imposing mustache was now mostly gray, and Mom's perfectly dyed blonde hair couldn't hide the deep wrinkles around her eyes. They were wearing their Sunday best. The same cheap, floral dress Mom wore to church, and Dad's ancient, ill-fitting brown suit. It was a pathetic display of their crumbling facade. The moment they walked in, Mom burst into theatrical tears. Not the quiet kind, but full-on, heaving sobs. "My baby boy. Oh, look at you all grown up." She tried to lunge forward for a hug, but I stepped back, holding up a hand. "Let's keep this professional," I said, gesturing to the chairs opposite my desk. "What do you want?" Dad puffed up, a familiar, self-righteous anger starting to brew. "Now, son, is that any way to talk to your mother after all these years? After everything we've done for her?" "Cut the act," I interrupted, my voice flat. "You didn't spend 20 years looking for me because you missed me. You found me now because you need something. What is it?" Mom's crying got louder, a manufactured wail. "How can you be so cruel? We made one little mistake." I laughed then, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. "A mistake? You left your 16-year-old kid at a gas station 200 miles from home as a joke. Then you drove off laughing, saying, 'Let's see how long it takes him to get home.' That wasn't a mistake. That was the last straw after years of your sick games. That was the day I stopped being your son. We came back for you," Dad shouted, standing up, his face reddening. "We drove back after an hour, but you were gone." "Yeah," I said, leaning forward slightly, my voice calm but firm. "I was gone, and I stayed gone. Best decision I ever made." I pulled out my phone and pressed record. "Now, state your business or leave." That's when the truth came out. Between Mom's sobs and Dad's angry outbursts, they explained their situation. They'd taken out a second mortgage on the house for one of Dad's foolproof investment schemes, a venture that had, predictably, turned into a bottomless pit of debt. Now they were 6 months behind on payments. The bank was foreclosing. They needed $175,000 to save their house. "You've done so well for yourself," Mom whimpered, gesturing vaguely at my modern office. "Surely you can help your own parents." I let them finish. I listened to their pleas, their thinly veiled threats, their attempts to guilt-trip me. Then, I reached into my desk and pulled out a folder. "Funny you should mention the house," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "See, when I heard you were looking for me, I did some digging, found out about the foreclosure. So I had my company acquire your mortgage debt from a bank. Legally. Last week." The silence was beautiful. Their faces went from confusion to shock to a raw, primal fear. Dad's voice, usually a booming thunder, had shrunk to a pathetic squeak. What does that mean?" "It means you have 30 days to vacate the property," I stated, my gaze unwavering. "My company acquired it legally at auction last week. We're demolishing it for a new development project." Mom started wailing, a high-pitched, desperate sound. Dad's face turned purple. You can't do this. That's our home. Like the gas station was my home. I retorted, a faint smile touching my lips. At least I'm giving you 30 days. You gave me 30 seconds. Dad lunged across the desk, his eyes wild. I stood my ground. My security detail, whom I'd had on standby, rushed in within seconds, restraining him. As they dragged my parents out, Mom screamed that I was evil, that I'd rot in hell. Dad threatened lawsuits. I just watched through the glass as they were escorted out, still recording everything. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Sabrina. They just called me crying. What did you do? I typed back, what they taught me to do. Look out for myself. The aftermath was exactly as I predicted. My parents went on a smear campaign, calling every single relative, telling them how their ungrateful son was throwing them out on the street. Thing is, they didn't expect me to have proof of everything. Remember those old Nokia phones that could record calls? I kept one from back then. I had their prank recorded, them laughing as they drove away, saying, let's see how long it takes him to get home. I kept it all these years. I also had a whole folder of old birthday cards with lovely messages like, maybe if you weren't such a disappointment, and countless texts documenting their emotional abuse. 20 years of documented gaslighting, manipulation, and conditional love, all neatly organized. Yesterday morning, I mass emailed everything to the entire family. Every single relative got to hear that recording, see those cards, read the text messages. By noon, Sabrina called me, crying. Turns out dear old Mom and Dad had been painting a very different picture all these years, she sobbed. They told everyone I ran away because I was on drugs. Classic. But the truth, raw and undeniable, was out. Their social mask, so meticulously crafted for decades, was finally shattered. And remember how I said I was going to demolish their house? Well, I did exactly that. I had the permits ready and everything. I even called them to come watch. They showed up with my Aunt Lola, my mom's sister, thinking she would talk some sense into me. Instead, they got front row seats to watching their precious house get torn down. Mom was screaming about her garden. Dad was threatening to sue. With what money, Gerald? I said softly. I stood there drinking my coffee, watching them lose it. 2 decades of their abuse, gone in 2 hours. The roar of the bulldozer tearing through Mom's prize-winning rose garden was the sweetest symphony I'd ever heard. It wasn't just destruction. It was the quiet, profound satisfaction of watching a long-suffering wound finally close, cleansing the last vestiges of their toxic influence. But I wasn't done. See, that land is actually in a decent location. Instead of some fancy, high-rise development, I'm building affordable housing, 20 units of reasonable rent, priority given to single parents and their kids. The plans are already approved. The best part? I'm naming it Annabelle Haven, after my Aunt Lola. She passed away last year, but she'd love knowing her name is on something helping people escape bad situations, creating a new kind of family based on support and genuine care. Mom and Dad try to rally the neighbors against me, showing them childhood photos of our happy family. Too bad those neighbors remembered how they used to hear me crying at night. One of them, Mrs. Henderson, even came up and hugged me, said she always regretted not calling CPS. That unexpected embrace, a simple act of human kindness, meant more than any victory. It was external validation, a silent acknowledgement that I wasn't crazy, that my pain was real. This morning was the final showdown. They came to my office again, this time all humble and contrite. Dad actually cried, said they were about to be homeless. Mom promised she'd forgive me if I just helped them out. I let them talk for 10 minutes straight. Then I handed them a rental application for one of the new units. You're welcome to apply, I told them, just like anyone else. But you'll need references and a clean credit check. Their faces, man. I wish I had a picture. But where are your parents? Mom screamed. Dad started with his usual, after everything we've done for you speech. I just smiled. Yes, after everything you've done, this is exactly what you deserve. This is what independence looks like. This is what boundaries feel like. The demolition crew starts at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Don't forget to take your garden gnomes. I added a small, final jab. They're still blowing up my phone. Sabrina says they're staying at some cheap motel, claiming they'll sue me. Good luck with that. Everything I did was completely legal. Their house goes down tomorrow, and I'm going to live stream it on Instagram for the whole family to see. You know what's funny? For years, I dreamed of revenge. I imagined all sorts of crazy scenarios. But in the end, just letting them face the consequences of their actions feels better than anything I could have planned. They threw away their son over a cruel prank, over their own distorted view of what family means. And now, they get to watch as everything they built gets torn down to help people they would have looked down on. Tomorrow, I'm bringing lawn chairs and popcorn to watch their house come down. To those asking about my sister, Sabrina and I are working things out. She was only 8 when everything happened. I can't blame her for believing their lies back then. We're getting coffee next week. We're building our own bridge, one based on honesty and mutual respect. This story, it's not just about what happened to me. It's about understanding that blood doesn't excuse abuse. It's about the courage it takes to define your own family, to set boundaries, and to walk away from what hurts you, even when it's supposed to be family. It's about finding peace not in vengeance, but in liberation. Some bridges deserve to stay burned. What does family truly mean to you? And when is it okay to walk away?